So I'd like to call Sean to start his presentation. Take it away, Sean.
Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I'm all set with all these screens. So can you hear me, Marcos? And can you see my screen?
Yes, I can hear you. I can see your screen. Very clear.
Okay, perfect. So happy to be here. My presentation it's going to be a combination of, I guess, the last two presentations where I'll be presenting some research we've done here at the college, but also on a very applied basis and applied nature. So how we've demonstrated this and done this on a large scale at the college or at producer sites. So I'll spend some time, a few slides introducing our center here before I get into a few examples of technologies. Some of them very basic, some of them just BMPs that maybe haven't been adopted widely or adopting them in a different way. And then some of them more exciting, some of the more innovative technologies that are new to industry and new to market. Full disclosure, save your hard questions for the experts. So I'll do my best to respond, but in a lot of cases, these projects are being led by researchers on our team. So I'll do my best, but we'll if there's any hard questions, I'll get you in touch with those. So quickly, we operate as the applied research arm in livestock for Olds College. So we're referred to as a Technology Access Center for Livestock Production. We're funded through NSERC. They provide us core funding, and then we do a lot of applied research and fee-for-service work out of the college here. Three main areas, and obviously the third one there is most prevalent for today. But those are the three areas we focus on in beef and sheep production. Here's a quick snapshot of our team. So myself and then a team of business development specialists, but also the main core is researchers. So manager, associates, scientists, technicians, and of course students throughout the year. Our typical clients, so we work kind of with everyone. So primary ag producers, so some of our feedlots, fee-for-service work, performance testing, that's directly with farmers. Innovators and tech developers, that's definitely on our list. Entrepreneurs, SMEs, and then even government and other universities. Facility-wise, so we have at Olds College here, we have a 1,000 head capacity feedlot, and we use that for animal feeding trials, fee-for-service work, like I already mentioned. We have labs for small scale or bio pilot work. We have greenhouse space, and then obviously one of our advantages is the 1,000+ acres of hay and pasture land we have access to. And then equipment, as our name suggests, so having access to some of the more specialized equipment that producers wouldn't have. Vitelli or grow-safe pumps like you see here, green feed units to measure individual animal GHG production, different sensors, different tags, different cameras, and then a laboratory in-house where we do some limited analysis. And then just to cap it off here, a few of the services and activities we do. So producer training, applied livestock research, industry events, student mentoring, and there's just a list of some of the research activities we offer. So sustainability, what does it mean to you? And so I ask this because sustainability is often associated with practices and technologies that reduce our environmental footprint, and that's kind of been the focus for today in the last 3 days. But sustainability has a lot of different definitions in the ag space. So that obviously environmental, but it could relate to other factors, animal health and welfare, people, on-farm efficiencies, economic viability, and even food as the end product. So with that in mind, that's kind of how the direction I've gone in our this presentation you're about to see. I'll start off with mentioning our Pitster land. So very briefly, the Pitster land, it was donated to the college in 2018. It can be characterized as low intensity, rundown land. It was tired land. It was a combination of grazing and cropping land. And so we took this as a challenge to be our sandbox to play in everything regenerative ag focused. And it allowed us to implement BMPs to support what I've shown on the screen there. So improving soil health, increasing forage production, enhancing biodiversity, healthier riparian areas, and everything in between. And so I've listed a project, our current project in that land there, funded by NSERC and Alberta Innovates, looking at climate change resiliency and sustainability. A couple definitions here. So one of the main things we did after taking over this land, what we first did was let's just implement rotational grazing. Let's just start easy, start small. So the definitions are there. It's not anything new, but we know the benefits of it. So let's start with rotational grazing, and we can start to see the benefits. I think most of the people on this call will know what rotational regenerative grazing is, but essentially it consists of controlling the frequency and intensity of grazing in each pasture. Ideally allowing animals to have no more than 50% of or consume no more than 50% of the available biomass before they're moved. And so why this is important is adoption across the prairies is still relatively low given the benefits. But over time, we've seen that rotational grazing or regenerative grazing is associated with increased organic matter percentage, increased water retention capacity, increased biodiversity, and then obviously productivity. I like this slide. One of my scientists developed this one, but rotational grazing and the science behind it isn't controversial, and it shouldn't be. And like I said, here's a few more stats, but rotational grazing can result in up to 180 tons of carbon per hectare stored. Improves productivity and overall ecosystem health, as well as the soil quality and just water retention and resiliency to droughts, which in today's climate, that's important. Okay, another project I want to highlight and a product we've looked at is soil biological additive. So this is a product out of Advanced Ag based out of Raymond, Alberta. Essentially, what you see on the screen there is the 5 different bacteria cocktail that they've come up with, each one having its own beneficial function. And so what we wanted to do was look at this, evaluate it as a potential means of making the soil better, and like I've kind of alluded to, enhancing sustainability. And so what we did here is we applied this product in strips within a 50-acre field, which I've shown on the screen there, with some controlled check strips in between. The orange there is where we applied it. The rate was 4 gallons per acre right after seeding, so immediately after seeding, and then again mid-season. The forage blend was a alfalfa sandfoin and then grass mixture. And we did simply just with this Gator sprayer, but it can be applied with any sort of sprayer application. And so what we're doing and what we did was then did high density soil sampling. So let's take a look at before and then how this changes, and also using the control as a comparison, using the Care Lab out here in Alberta to look at physical, chemical, and biological properties of the soil and how those change. And so these were collected over the last summer. We're still going through it, so I don't have any results to share in terms of stats, but anecdotally and visually, there's quite a change between the check versus the control, or check versus the treatment strips. What we're hoping to validate through this project is just claims from the provider that it improves soil health, water retention, enhances seed germination, increases soil, the presence of beneficial bacteria in the soil, and then ultimately biomass production. So same field, but another project and technology we're using is satellite imagery. So can NDVI be used to assist with rotational grazing practices? Can it be a tool? So we would say the answer is yes, and that's twofold. So one, both for planning purposes related to your rotational grazing plan, but also for the maintenance and operations of a grazing plan. So we've partnered with Wyvern. They're a tech company who specialize in satellite imagery and specifically using hyperspectral data from these satellites. I think on the next slide we'll get into some of the more detail. So what did we do? So we needed to calibrate this NDVI imagery. By calibrating, we use clipping samples, so seen on the screen there, to ground truth what the NDVI was predicting or showing us, and then made that into converted that to a dry matter weight, and then that essentially created this yield map for the pasture that you see in front of you here. So how can we use that? Here's a table here looking at the different zones and the actual numbers behind them. So estimated yield, you see that obviously differs and increases as you go from zone 1 to zone 5. But what that allows you to do is, let's look at the estimated available forage per zone. Taking that a step further, let's use this, like I mentioned before, in planning. Can we, if you're new to rotational grazing, can you take a pasture and create your paddocks and your paddock sizes using that information so that you have a even easier format for planning to rotate animals every X number of days? Maybe you have a low quality paddock 4, like on the screen there, and it needs to be a bit bigger than paddock 1 because it has less biomass available. And then another way to look at it here is just being able to plan your movements, rotational grazing, by knowing the available forage per paddock. And that's in that last column there on the screen where this map will tell you you have this many dry matter pounds per acre, or this many dry matter pounds in that paddock. You know how many animals you have. Let's create your rotation and your grazing plan based off of that. The next technology also includes some of these benefits, but this essentially helps eliminate that subjectivity from visual assessment. So maybe you're doing rotational grazing, but it's all visually based. 50% for you may differ from 50% from your neighbor in terms of what's left for biomass. Let's take out that subjectivity and use a technology like this. So as I mentioned, rising plate meter, it's obviously a less techy option, but achieves much of the same. So what we use is GenQuip EC09. It's based out of New Zealand. And there's a picture there. It essentially uses canopy height to tell you or predict the available biomass for a paddock. Gives you output every time you plunge it down. A lot of producers are using this in New Zealand for assessing when animals need to be moved in a rotational grazing system, or for assessing stocking densities before animals go out. And like I said, this helps to reduce that subjectivity because it's a number. That's not subjective. It produces a number, and whether it's person to person or different herds people moving animals, it eliminates that subjectivity. And so we set out to calibrate this in an Alberta setting or a Western Canadian setting. So here's very simply how it works. You plunge it, the canopy then gives you an estimation of biomass. And through our calibration, we get a fairly good R-squared of 0.736. That's, in my books anyways, that's more than good enough to be using this as a estimation of biomass as you're planning your rotations. So similar to the NDVI case, here's how you may be able to use it. So let's just say we have an average of 2,334 dry matter pounds per acre across all these paddocks. We know the paddock size. We know how many animals are grazing. Here's the number of grazing days. And this can be used as a guideline for when to move animals to the next paddock. All right, a bit of a different direction here, but virtual fencing. So sustainability wise, the ability to reduce labor requirements, minimize fencing infrastructure costs, and ultimately improve efficiencies through improving grazing distribution. But the question has been, and there's been a lot of press around this last 5 years, do they work in Canada, given our terrain and our cold winters? And so we got access to a limited number of samples, collars from No Fence, a Norwegian company, with the intent to test these in Alberta. Test if the animals can be trained and some other behavioral aspects around it. Quickly, and just to summarize, in a small pilot project with 4 animals, you can see here the yellow is the number of audible signs. So as animals approach a boundary, a virtual boundary with these collars, you get an audible noise. And if they exceed that boundary, then it's an electric shock, a small shock that gets the animals. So here's just incidences over just 4 days, how they responded. And you can see by day 4, audible signs were they were 0 for 2 animals, and when it came to the shocks, they were 0 for all animals, and that continued on after day 4 as well. So training wise, and that was a big question we had from producers, quite short, and of course it was only 4 animals, but it was actually we were quite successful in training these animals. In terms of GPS accuracy, excellent. So less than a meter error, especially or even on the partially cloudy days. When days got even cloudier, rainy days, the accuracy did get worse. And we had a few instances of animals actually randomly being shocked. So that's something to take into account for the developers, but also for the users. So summarizing our findings, in terms of group behavior, the collared animals and the control animals without collars, they actually remain quite close to each other, which potentially leads to benefits for cows and calves and only needing collars on cows, as an example. Next step in this project will be testing on a larger animal and with cows and calves. And then the big question, does it work in the winter? And so we tested this below -30 in Alberta here, and the answer was yes. They all have little solar panels on them to help with recharging batteries, and in a corn grazing scenario, it worked well, and there's no incidences of animals exceeding those boundaries. So that was a plus. I'm going to briefly mention this technology from Carbon Asset Solutions. It's essentially a carbon quantification tool. And so Carbon Asset Solutions, they use this mobile inelastic neutron scattering system, or MINS as they call it, to measure soil carbon non-invasively. So essentially using this to penetrate to the soil and quantify soil carbon. And so we've partnered with them in using it for research, but also to help them validate their system here using some of the fields at the college. They have a different, I guess this is preparation for some of these carbon credit network or systems and programs that are either in infancy or starting up or to be developed. And so producers to get a jump start on that. But their model is measuring carbon stored in the soil with producers, giving a payment or credit based on that, and basically rewarding BMPs that improve or increase that carbon in the soil by measuring it year over year and entering an arrangement with the company. Okay, switching again, directions a bit. So water level sensors. These are some of the sensors that we've been testing and demonstrating for their ability to reduce labor requirements, but I say here also reduce stress during the summer months. And so why I say stress, it is producers, a lot of cattle producers will go out and check their animals more frequently than they would probably want to or need to, especially in the summer months, because they want to make sure that the animals have access to water, especially in a situation where you're pumping off a well or off of a natural body water, river, creek, that sort of thing. And so this gives, like I said, reduces stress. It gives you the comfort to know that animals have access to water. So two different systems. This one's Farm Simple, based out of Saskatchewan. Uses cellular data, solar powered, and you get email and text alerts from the system to say when there's a low water warning or if there's an issue with the system. The other one is an Australian-based company, RanchBots. Similar concepts. They use cell phone or satellite frequency, solar powered. Also get those text alerts. Both of them work quite well. We've had them deployed the last 2 or 3 years here at the college. Here's just pictures of the setup. Quite simple to move around, and definitely in a situation where travel is an issue or you're visiting a pasture, just to ensure that there's water available at all times. This is something that could be adopted to eliminate some of those trips. Okay, and then so the last two, I just want to highlight, so feed efficiency. That's something that's it's been a priority for the last several decades, but still to this date, there's not a lot of producers that have adopted this this measurement or this trait in their selection of genetic selection on their herds. And why is this? Well, potentially it's from lack of access to equipment like I have on the screen there, or it could be just not confidence in genetic testing. And so we offer this testing, the actual testing itself, using Vitelli bunks at Olds College, and there's a few other providers in Canada that do this, but space is limited, and so producers that access it, they get that first-hand information to use for marketing or genetic selection, but it's hard to get access to it. Genetic testing, I will say, when I was asked this question 20 years ago or 15 years ago, I didn't have a lot of confidence in the accuracy. I think that's definitely changed, and I would see value in using genetic testing as a way to select for feed efficiency. And then the obvious benefits, reducing feed requirements, feeding more animals on the same amount of feed, or reducing enteric methane emissions by selecting on efficiency. And then also what we're doing is looking at other indirect methods for predicting feed efficiency, like infrared thermography is one example. Some of them are available, and then they're just being validated at Olds and at some of our partner sites on a large scale to prove that validation. And then the last one here, I want to mention, it's not so much livestock related, but in a way it can be tied to it. It's a marginal cropland project that we have ongoing with an industry partner. So there's 4 different types of marginal land. This project focuses on economically marginal land. The other types are geographical, ecosystem, or soil suitability, but this one's focusing on the economics of it. And so we've identified a few different BMPs or types of BMPs that could be removed, that could be adopted in marginal land, so land that doesn't make you money, essentially. Expenses exceed the revenues for those pieces of land. So BMPs could be pollinator strips. It could be converting that land into hay or pasture, depending on the size and the feasibility. And so what we're doing now, excuse me, with this industry partner is, how do we assess and identify these areas of marginal land, and what are some BMPs that would make sense given the size or given the potential revenue? And so we're currently in the stage now of developing a plan to monitor a lot of land here at the college and some of our partner sites, putting economics behind it, and then developing ways that we can improve it through other BMPs not related to cropping. Okay, I went through a lot in a short time, but I'll leave it there and happy to answer some questions in the Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Very good presentation. I'm amazed how sharp your picture is, like this last picture you had there. Okay, so we're running a little bit behind schedule, so we will take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back at 3:15 sharp to start our panel discussion, okay? So we give a little break here so people can grab some water, take a bio break, and then we're back in 5 minutes.